Thankfully, we're leaving this place with 4 additional insect species inside the room and headed out to a place called Chirilagua.
Are you gonna miss this road?
Huh?
Are you gonna miss this road?
Am I gonna miss the what?
The road!
Oh, the road. No, it's also awful. Some of it was our fault for our selection. Some of it was the host's fault for having this. And then we're on to Nicaragua. Can you believe it? Well, it's a fair ways away from El Cuco, but it's, for the price, it's quite nice seeming. Chirilagua, the most sort of villagey place. Not a ton of English, not a ton of amenities, but still quite charming. When it's tomorrow for me, but in like 30 seconds for you, we'll start seeing what people really come here to do. I'm like, wow, is this place always such a ghost town? And the answer is, on a Sunday, yes. We are finally headed to check out El Cuco Beach, which is about 6-7 kilometers from Chirilagua. So we're gonna get on a 320 bus, and hopefully within 20-30 minutes later, we'll be there. What do you think? Looks like another El Salvadorian beach, doesn't it? And there's lots of swimming in this one, so I think we can go in. We just took a dip and that was pretty nice. The beach goes on and on and on. Down that way. Lots to see and do. Most of the stuff to see and do is eating, boating, surfing, and probably drinking. I'm gonna hit you with all of the pros, the cons, the tips, the tricks, and a little rundown about El Salvador. El Salvador is moving into a new era of welcoming tourists and moving more freely about their country. Many people here have a reserved nature that is honestly seeming to be the result of widespread Catholicism, also enduring years of gang rule, and formerly having one of the highest murder and violent crime statistics in all of the world. On their way to becoming the modern El Salvador that we are currently visiting, they became the first country in the world to accept Bitcoin as their national currency. They jailed nearly 100,000 gang members and eventually dropped Bitcoin in favor of a deal with the International Monetary Fund to use the US dollar. Their renewal is not without some criticism, particularly of their current president, Bukele. In order to move his vision of the future forward, he imploded his own former governing party, rewrote the Constitution to allow for multiple long terms of governance, and has yet to officially lift an ongoing state of emergency that was used as the means to round up all of those aforementioned gang members and jail them. From the perspective of a tourist, we saw a humble land of volcanoes, colorful cities and villages, vast beaches, and people here generally excited to see foreigners. We could feel that to many, seeing foreigners was a confirmation of renewal and growth as a country. Folks here are curious and share vibrance and a lot of appreciation for humor and conversation once you offer some friendly words in the spirit of understanding. So let's talk about the pros of visiting El Salvador, and there are many, but let's get to the major ones first. Gentle people who are helpful and kind. No one ever seemed put off by questions, and most people really wanted to share their pride in the land they live on. Even the town folks, sitting outside who seemed unhoused, they don't get too pushy, and touts are almost nowhere to be found here. There is clear and obvious safety all around, but the trade-off there is that represents an increased police and military presence. It is so easy and affordable to get transport here. Getting a dirt cheap ride on a local bus for $1 or even less is a great option for backpackers and budget-conscious travelers. But even Uber and apps like InDrive allow you to get a ride to just about everywhere. Obviously, when you're in some of the more remote areas, it becomes difficult, but you're never too far away from a little bus to connect you to a larger zone. In the North American and fall-winter season, it is dry and hot and relatively cool at night here, unless you're along the coast. We've been here 6 weeks now and have not seen a single drop of rain. Local food is inexpensive and abundant. Most street food and restaurants handle food quite well and very hygienically. Services like hair, beauty, basic repairs on things are excellent and affordable. And side note, I got one of the best haircuts I've ever had in my life, with the longest attention to detail I've ever had in my life as a trade-off, for $3 US. Cell phone service is easy to acquire, reasonably cheap compared to Canada. But one word of warning, not every phone takes every plan here, so start small, because once you've bought a prepaid plan, It's non-refundable regardless. If you're traveling with someone else, you can always see if they can take that plan and then switch to a different provider. Their use of the US dollar provides a familiar and stable way to understand the true prices of things. But there is a slight con there, so let's move on to some negatives we encountered. Their adoption of the American dollar means that many items, especially imported items, are essentially the same price or much, much higher than North America itself. Only since using the new currency, people have faced some upward pressure on the cost of living, despite having hardly any increase in their monthly wage. The minimum monthly wage, by the way, here is $425 US. Certain grocery items and less simple local foods increase sharply in price. A pupusa is as little as 50 cents, while one large topping pizza can go for as much as $30 US. If you're concerned, there's an easy remedy. Buy your own groceries and cook your own food. Or just eat traditional food like pupusas and whatever else seems local. You could also shop for any of the abundant fruits and vegetables. There's lots here. Groceries and food will get more expensive in remote areas, especially beach areas and any place set up exclusively for tourists. If you're in the capital or one of the couple other highly populous areas, lots of cheap produce and groceries. So I liked to stock up a little bit in these areas and then bring them further out with me. El Salvador is not water secure. This is one of the biggest issues here. Many places had intermittent water outages, and in Santa Ana, this water outage during our visit lasted 3.5 days. Be sure that you have lots of drinking water on hand, as there is nowhere that has any tap water that is safe for consumption when it does run. We did encounter a fair amount of bugs, mosquitoes, and even a scorpion or two. At our level of stay, I don't think we saw a window screen at all, even once. In many places, there are issues with litter, smoke, and general pollution. In the big cities, the black smoke from diesel buses and industry gave us a sore throat a fair amount of the time. And all through the villages we visited, the solution for garbage buildup is to burn it, which means there is often the smell of burning plastic in the air for long parts of the day. Because tourism feels pretty new, we found that some places had slightly underwhelming tours or just sort of bare bones options, and not a ton of infrastructure to support that tourism that they were driving to those places. That said, this can also be a positive, because the serene feeling of a village or place not impacted by tourism can be a real novelty. In that same spirit, the new tourism movement has not totally caught up to many global service standards. Climate control, pest control, cleanliness and maintenance standards are all disparate from place to place and not what many sensitive North Americans would expect. Amenities like internet speed and room furnishings might feel dated. At hotels and especially guest houses and Airbnbs, there is a not consistent standard for toiletries provided. Many places kind of featured various levels of diluted household cleaner or all-purpose jugs of pink cleaner sold at roadside automotive stands, kind of would be passed off as shampoo or body wash. So if you have preferences, bring your own, because anything name brand or nationally available in North America of any sort of standard quality is either not available or quite expensive. Half the toilet paper is see-through or like razor-lined cardboard, so we carried our own emergency roll to avoid disappointment. Medical services and North American standard hospitals are exceptionally rare here. Be sure you have a plan in each place that you visit, because getting an ambulance or a well-appointed hospital with experienced staff is fairly rare. If you are injury prone or have complex medical needs, you might consider how much visiting of rural areas you do here. The accessibility for disability here is essentially non-existent. If you have mobility needs, especially those which require a mobility device such as a power chair, wheelchair, or walker, your experience here could be quite limited. The buses and transit stations are under a fair amount of modernization and redesign. Many times it was confusing to know exactly where we would even go. Even though Google would say one thing, it was often wrong. Be prepared for delays and to ask locals where the hell you're going. Tourist tax or scams or whatever you want to call it. It happens very mildly, occasionally, here and there, but it evaporated under polite query or some gentle pushback. Before we go on to tips and tricks, tell me in the comments, did I miss some pros? Did I miss some cons? And do you have any other questions? Because I probably know the answer. I just like to keep these videos as short as possible. It is customary to say hello to literally everyone, and you'll do a lot better in your day-to-day interactions if you greet people as soon as they make eye contact, or even if they don't. It's a bit paradoxical, honestly. People here, we found, do expect you to greet them, but they rarely will greet you first. They seem a bit shy. But we also learned that when you do greet them, it's an immediate, enthusiastic response. Be sure to say buenos dias in the AM, buenas tardes in the afternoon, and only once it is definitively getting dark would you use the phrase buenas noches. Hey, I'm just going to cut in here for a second because there's something I forgot to mention. If you're visibly tattooed, do not be offended that people are varying degrees of uneasy. Before, in the old times, before that big roundup of gangsters along with a few apparently innocent people happened, anyone with a head tattoo, face tattoo, visible tattoos on the hand, those were murderers. It's actually only been 3 years, maybe 4 years, some places only as little as 2 years while the roundup was happening, that they had any freedom at all. Someone we spoke to in Nahuizelco said that he was 25 and it was the first time he had a job because where he was from, both towns in the area were controlled by gangs and they couldn't leave. So people understand that tourists have body art and stuff, but they're not, they're still socially programmed about those tattoos. I even learned how to say, don't worry, I'm nice. Be sure to dispel any worry that they have. It's on us as tattooed people to be ambassadors. And a lot of people, like in the capital, or when I ask them directly, they'd say, oh no, we know foreigners have it. It's just like old habits die hard kind of thing. So that's it. Back to the other part. InDrive and Uber for transport here are amazing. At the end of the trip, we found the app InDrive, which is cheaper and may introduce you to awesome drivers who you can arrange private trips with for the duration of your stay. It's actually favored by the drivers here because there's less commission, it's less exploitative, and it allows for fair negotiation. Shout out to William on the app InDrive, who we met in La Libertad, who speaks incredible English, a real gem, and a safe and excellent driver. We met him as our first ever trip in InDrive. We were at a remote beach spot with no other drivers around and having a heck of a time trying to get an Uber. Here's a fun tip and trick. If you're eating pupusas, and believe me, you should, you will inevitably see cortito. That's a condiment that comes with it. It kind of looks like sauerkraut. And since this looks like sauerkraut, you may not be aware that it is actually supposed to be more like a salad and not fermented. I noticed some active bubbles in one I ate recently, but I thought nothing of it because my brain told me it was like sauerkraut. Well, I got food poisoning. That was mild compared to, say, India or Thailand, but was still pretty gnarly. So eat at places that only have fresh, cold curtido. Now, generally on the vegan side of things, El Salvador is not an innately vegan-friendly place, but there are tons of omission options, and self-cook options are available as the produce is generally quite abundant. I do recommend you travel here with perhaps a protein supplement or a meal replacement. That will ensure you can live on beans, corn, rice, veg, potatoes, and your supplement protein if you need that. They do have a widely available and cheap product called Protemas when it's branded, but otherwise it's just known as textured soy protein, proteína de soya texturizado. The benefit there, it's a dry product, so it travels very well. And it was cheap in grocery stores, either branded as Protemas or in bulk, but it was incredibly cheap at local markets, which overall is the most economical way we found to get groceries. Grocery stores are convenient, but for the love of God, don't buy produce there. It was triple, quadruple, even 10 times the price. Another thing I found is that most budget beef and chicken stock, labeled beef and chicken stock, had absolutely no animal products in them at all, and added depth of flavor to lots of dishes I made. And that's also dry and travels well with your Protemas. Sauces and seasoning are also available in little single or double-use packets, so that's very convenient. Tell me, have you been to El Salvador? What did you like? What did you dislike? Now, we're going to check out a little bit more of what we did on the way out. What's that?
What are you doing?
Obviously becoming a real Salvadoran now. For vegan everywhere, and sad to be leaving the beautiful country of El Salvador. But onward to Nicaragua. I'm David.